Hey, what's up? This is Bree Stoner. You're listening to Your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Bill Donahue at Billboard, Live Nation must be broken up from Ticketmaster after monopoly verdict, states tell judge.
And from Tim Ingham at Music Business Worldwide, Spotify and Universal Music Group strike landmark deal to let fans create AI covers and remixes.
From Kristen Robinson at Billboard, Spotify's head of music announces reserved ticketing initiative.
And from Joel Gavia at the Artist Economy, if I ran Spotify... ... Well, we are glad you're here. Jay and I are going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. Standing by. Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Jay, good to see you, brother.
Good morning. It's an early recording this week.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It feels weird to be up at this hour, but
Yeah,
I'm glad we are. I'm glad to see you and catch
good to
up,
see you.
and we got some good stories to talk
Yes,
about.
the show must go on. So that music was Bree Stoner. The song is What Do I Gotta Do? That's from the album Matador. Came out a couple of weeks ago on Label 51. Thank you, Bree.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Bree. Before we get into the big stories this week, let's give you a quick update on the No Fakes Act. So from Mandy DeLugdug over at Music Business Worldwide, Spotify backs U.S. bill to outlaw AI deepfakes, joining UMG, Sony, Warner, Google, and OpenAI in growing coalition.
That's right. On May 20th, a bipartisan, bicameral group of lawmakers reintroduced the No Fakes Act. And that No Fakes Act is Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act, No Fakes. In both the House and the Senate, the bill would, for the first time, establish a federal intellectual property right in an individual's voice and likeness, letting people take legal action against anyone who knowingly creates, distributes, or profits from unauthorized AI digital replicas.
Right. This is the third attempt at the bill. It stalled in committee in both July of 2024 and April of 2025. But each iteration has returned with a broader coalition. The headline development this week is that Spotify and Getty have joined, adding to a roster that already includes UMG, Sony Music, Warner's, the RIAA, the Recording Academy, NMPA, and since last year, Google, OpenAI, and IBM.
Quite a coalition. So here are a few takeaways from this story. It's worth watching because the momentum and coalition breadth, not the passage. Backers are calling this the most advanced piece of AI legislation before Congress with the broadest network of supporters. But it has failed twice before, so this is still a bill, not yet a law. So tech and platforms are now aligned with rights holders. Spotify, Google, OpenAI, IBM, all of those that Mike just mentioned. including, majors, PROs. That signals an unusual industry-wide consensus. That alignment is the single biggest change from prior versions and improves the odds of this advancing.
Yeah, what's interesting is the 2026 draft was rewritten to address platform concerns. That's right, platform concerns. The likely reason Spotify came aboard. New provisions include a counter notice procedure to challenge wrongful takedowns, a safe harbor from liability for user-generated content platforms that follow takedown rules, and exemptions for libraries, archives, and research. That's on top of existing carve-outs for news, documentaries, biopics, sports, satire, and criticism. The bill explicitly distinguishes user-generated content platforms from curated services. That's very interesting.
Yeah, Spotify's endorsement fits a clear enforcement pattern here. It removed 75 million plus quote-unquote spammy tracks, we're talking about that recently, over this last year, launched an impersonation policy banning unauthorized AI voice clones, added artist profile protection, artists vet releases before they post them, and the day before reintroduction, extended verified by Spotify badges to podcasts, where AI-generated shows are now reportedly exceeding a third of new feeds. That's crazy. Legislative support reinforces moves Spotify is already making operationally.
Yeah, the thing to pay attention is free speech balance is the central design tension. So sponsors stress the bill strengthens protections without compromising free speech. And the RIAA cites polling that 92% of Americans are concerned about deep fakes. Expect the counter notice safe harbor mechanics to be where lobbying and amendments concentrate.
Right. And finally, the bottom line is that the legal framework around AI voice likeness is consolidating and platforms are no longer on the sidelines. Even before passage, the practical direction of travel, verification, consent-based replicas, takedown obligations, they're becoming the industry standard. Worth factoring into AI licensing strategy, artist contract language around likeness rights, and platform compliance planning now.
Yeah, we will be keeping an eye on this, and let's see where it goes. Hey, before we get going on the big stories, we are going to thank our wonderful sponsors. Support for the show comes from Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Founded by Bruce Houghton, Hypebot is edited by touring artist and publisher Jeremy Young and supported by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yes, sir, Bands in Town. Now over 100 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform, and it connects over 700,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates to music fans across all platforms. And Apple Music now has concert listings via Bands in Town.
Yes, indeed. And man, every week for 303 episodes, regular episodes, and about 60 special episodes, I get to hang out with my brother Jay Gilbert, music business consultant, educator, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups, and the guy who takes the rocks out of his dog's mouth.
Yeah, every day. It's the weirdest thing. He loves them. And I get to do this show every week with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capitol EMI, and Universal Music Groups.
Yes, all right. We are going to jump into the stories. The first from Bill Donahue over at Billboard. Live Nation must be broken up from Ticketmaster after monopoly verdict, states tell judge. So Live Nation must be broken up from Ticketmaster, state attorneys general told a federal judge this last Thursday, weeks after a blockbuster jury verdict that the music giant is an illegal monopoly.
Right. So Bill goes on to talk about how laying out their proposed punishment after that verdict, a coalition of dozens of states argue in a hotly anticipated legal brief that the only way to fix the live music business is to force Live Nation to sell Ticketmaster. An order requiring Live Nation to divest Ticketmaster such that it is capable of restoring competition for primary ticketing contracts with major concert venues, the states wrote in a list of orders it's seeking from the judge.
So the Department of Justice and dozens of states sued Live Nation back in 2024, claiming the company, which, don't forget, acquired Ticketmaster back in 2010, had grown into a monopoly that dominates live music. So the then Attorney General Merrick Garland said it's time to break it up. A week after the case went to trial in March, the Department of Justice agreed to a surprise settlement that did not require such a breakup. But dozens of states said that deal was insufficient and instead pushed ahead with the trial with the goal of splitting Ticketmaster from Live Nation.
Yeah, on April 15th, jurors handed Live Nation a total defeat, finding that the company had illegally monopolized the market for ticketing services and the use of amphitheaters, and that it had illegally tied the use of its venues to its concert promotion services.
So now, a month later, the states have made it official. In the terminology of antitrust law, they're asking the judge to impose structural remedies that require Live Nation's divestiture of Ticketmaster. So the states wrote in seeking that order, plaintiffs are evaluating the scope of assets, contracts, personnel, and systems that would be necessary for a standalone Ticketmaster to effectively compete in the market for primary ticketing services.
Wow. And that's not all the states want. They're also asking the judge to force Live Nation to divest a sufficient number of large amphitheaters, as well as put limits or prohibitions on the company when it comes to acquiring such venues in the future. And they want, quote, money damages for overcharges on ticketing fees paid by residents of the plaintiff states, end quote, as well as the handover of ill-gotten profits derived from ticketing fees during the time of this unlawful monopoly.
A rep for Live Nation did not immediately return a request for comment on Thursday. The company is expected to argue that the case can be resolved solely by the changes to its business practices previously agreed to with the Department of Justice, including limiting the use of exclusive contracts without divesting Ticketmaster. So Live Nation, in a statement last month, said, "We remain confident that the ultimate outcome of the state's case will not be materially different than what is envisioned by the Department of Justice settlement."
Wow. Well, we'll be watching this super closely as it moves forward. Our next story is from Tim Ingham at Music Business Worldwide, and the headline was Spotify and Universal Music Group strike landmark deal to let fans create AI covers and remixes as a paid premium add-on. So that's the headline, and that was May 21st. Spotify and Universal Music Group, they announced this licensing agreement that'll let fans create AI-generated covers and remixes of songs from participating artists and songwriters. That's the key. The feature launches as a paid add-on to Spotify premium subscribers, positioned as a new revenue stream layered on top of existing streaming royalties. The deal spans both recorded music and publishing, and any Spotify user, not just paying creators, will be able to play the resulting tracks.
So the big picture is the structural model that matters. This is built around consent, credit, and compensation. Participation is strictly opt-in. The tool only works on catalog from artists and songwriters who agree to take part, and creators directly share in the value generated. It also fits the emerging walled garden approach that UMG has been pushing. AI-generated derivatives stay inside the platform and can't be downloaded or distributed externally. Pricing and a hard launch date were not disclosed, though prior reporting suggested a Music Pro tier at up to $5.99 a month.
Right. So let's look at a couple of highlights. The rights framework was the bottleneck, and it just broke. Spotify's Gustav Soderstrom said in February the technology was already ready. What was missing was a licensing structure. Securing UMG, the world's largest rights holder, is the unlock. Watch for Sony and Warner to follow or to hold out for better terms.
Yeah, this reframes catalog as a creation engine, not just a playback asset. UMG is treating AI derivatives as an untapped opportunity for artists to make money off their existing IP, monetizing the same songs a second time through fan participation rather than passive listening.
Yeah, and this walled garden approach, this is becoming the industry standard. Tied to UMG's October 2025 Udio settlement, And the UMG linked patent portfolio, artist approval, automated revenue distribution, digital watermarking. This signals that the majors' answers to generative AI is controlled, licensed, on platform, not the open distribution. Position against unlicensed players, Suno is currently being sued, and accordingly.
So monetization beyond subscription is the real strategic thread for Spotify. With 761 million monthly active users and 293 million subscribers as of Q1 this year, even modest add-on attach rates are material. This is consistent with Spotify's superfan upsell roadmap.
Yeah, open questions to track here, Mike. Actual price point and launch timing, the artist payout split, opt-in rates. The feature is only as deep as the catalog creators license into it, and how royalties are allocated between the new covers, remixes, and the original works.
Yeah, and a few framing caveats worth flagging. The announcement is heavy on principle, talking about artist-centric and responsible AI, but light on mechanics. No disclosed economics, no named AI tech partner, no consumer pricing. Treat the additional revenue for artists claim as a stated intent pending the actual split. And note that fan and artist reception, like creative control and dilution concerns, well, that is still untested.
Yeah. And again, we'll be watching this really closely. It could be a game changer. Our next story is from Kristen Robinson, our friend over at Billboard. The headline is Spotify's head of music announces reserved ticketing initiative as AI proliferates real-world experiences mean that much more. At Spotify's Investor Day last week, global head of music Charlie Hellman announced Reserved, a new ticketing initiative that identifies an artist's most dedicated fans and holds 2 tour tickets for each one. It launches this summer in the U.S., debuting with Live Nation and expanding to additional promoters through the rest of the year. Spotify says it's already worked with 40-plus ticketing partners to source inventory.
Well, yeah. So the pitch is a guarantee rather than a pre-sale, where conventional pre-sales hand fans a code and drop them into a queue. Reserved has Spotify and promoters hold a block of tickets for invited superfans. So as long as the fan shows up within their window, a ticket is there. Hellman frames this as solving one of the biggest things that's broken about fandom: the scalper, the bot, and queue-driven chaos for on-sales.
Wow, this is really interesting. Eligibility is determined by a proprietary, quote-unquote, 360-degree fan picture, and that's built from streams, saves, shares, repeat listening, and other engagement signals, deliberately undisclosed, so it can't be gamed. I like that. The monitoring to confirm that the fans are real humans, not bots. Notably, superfans will outnumber available seats, so an invite isn't universal, even among qualifying premium subscribers.
Yeah, so here are a few things to kind of check out and remember. It's a premium retention and differentiation play, not a new revenue line. So Spotify is extending premium's value proposition from purely digital benefits into the physical world. The strategic bet, in Hellman's words, as AI proliferates, real-world experiences mean that much more. Live and authenticated human fandom becomes the moat as AI-generated content floods the catalog.
Right. The second takeaway is that Spotify is monetizing its data advantage. The company's edge is verified paying subscribers and granular visibility into genuine engagement. And it really positions it as a more credible arbiter of who is a real fan than the current first-come ticketing system. This is a fan quality story, not just a fan quantity story. Hellman directly addresses the gap between streaming popularity and ticket buying intent. Viral artists who can't fill arenas, for example. Reserved is designed to surface diehards likely to actually attend the concert, which should interest promoters and artists managing tour risk.
Yeah, we got to watch the competitive and platform context. So launching with Live Nation amid the noted Live Nation settlement trending item is significant. AEG and others are not yet involved. It also lands alongside two other Investor Day announcements. That's a Spotify UMG licensing deal for AI covers, remixes, and surging audiobook interest. And that's reinforcing the real experiences with AI narrative that the leadership over at Spotify is pushing.
Yeah, super interesting. And finally, an open question to sort of track is the undisclosed selection formula raises fairness, transparency concerns with some, the scarcity, more superfans than seats. That could create new fan friction and the durability of artist/promoter participation as it scales beyond the Live Nation pilot. This is unproven, but it'll be super interesting to watch how this plays out.
Yeah, God, that would be a really cool thing if that gets up and running. And we shall see. Yeah, indeed. Our last story, Jay, is from our friend Joel Gavia. If I ran Spotify, so ... of course. So in this particular article, Joel starts with a paradox. He says the music business is thriving on paper. Global recorded revenue hit more than $31 billion last year. That's up 6.4%, marking 11 straight years of growth, with the market doubling since 2014 and 837 million paying subscribers. He says, yet sentiment towards Spotify is sour. His diagnosis is that Spotify isn't failing on access or discovery. It's failing on the relationship with artists and fans.
Yeah, we've been following Joel Gavia and his writing. We think it's just fantastic. And he really frames Spotify as a tech company in the music space, not a music company in the tech space. And he argues it's actually in the fandom business without realizing it. He explicitly nods to the counter-argument from Jacopo Romei that a market isn't broken. It just grew from the bottom, and the loudest complainers wouldn't have been professional artists in the old system. His response, fair, but the platform never updated to handle that shift.
Some things to consider from Joel's article: identity verification, know your customer at upload. No identity equals no royalties. So require human identity verification before uploading, similar to financial industry know your customer rules. The target is AI-generated fraud. About 60,000 fully AI tracks are uploaded daily. 106,000 total daily uploads, says Luminate. About 96.2% from indie DIY channels. And a striking claim that 85% of streams on AI-generated music are fraudulent. That's according to Deezer. On Deezer, AI tracks are 28% of uploads, but only 0.5% of streams, yet still dilutes the shared royalty pool.
Another takeaway from this article, Joel says, kill pro rata, adopt user-centric or fan-powered royalties. Today, every subscription dollar flows into one pool split by total platform share. So a fan's $11.99 subsidizes superstars and AI loops, regardless of what they actually play. But user-centric routes a listener's money only to the artists that they stream. And he cited evidence of a 2021 CNN Deloitte study. Top 10 payouts dropped 17.2% on Deezer, 12% on Spotify, and a 2023 SoundCloud study that 1 in 5 indie artists would roughly double their royalty income. Mid-tail, up about 14%. He notes majors quietly defend pro rata because it subsidizes their existing catalog.
Joel suggests something called a backstage pass, a Substack-style paid tier. He says, let artists keep the catalog free, but optionally gate demos, alternate versions, early drops, or commentary behind a subscription. He says this would absorb the third-party superfan platform tools artists currently bolt on because Spotify won't build the obvious feature.
Another point Joel makes is, turn listening data into community, quote unquote, rooms. Spotify hoards rich data, like Wrapped, but only activates it once a year. Joel would build a gated group, of chats, forums, badges, achievements, and profile flair tied to listening tiers. Like, for example, the top 2% of an artist's fans get a shared room. The social fandom layer Spotify is really neglected for 15 years. And here's what Joel wouldn't touch. He defends the algorithm. Discovery is Spotify's genuine gift to culture. He says the free tier, the free to paid funnel is the whole business, and says Spotify shouldn't try to compete with the majors. The problem isn't too much music. It's the broken relationship with creators and fans.
So one of the big takeaways is the strategic thesis worth internalizing. Streaming democratized access, but never built the 3 layers that distribute that growth back to creators. A fair royalty model, a fan monetization layer, and a community layer. The whole cottage industry of operators, consultants, and superfan tools exists only to patch those gaps.
Yeah, 2 of Joel's ideas, 2 of the 5, are structural and contentious. User-centric royalties, that redistributes from the major superstars to the long tail, hence quiet major label resistance. And that KYC upload friction we talked about, that's an anti-fraud play against royalty pool dilution. 3 are product relationship plays Spotify could ship without upending up economics. Paid artist tiers, fandom communities, and sort of a gamified profile.
Yeah, Joel's closing warning is the line to really remember here. He says, take them all or don't, and watch the operator class build it around you. The competitive risk isn't more music, it's third parties capturing the artist-fan relationship that the DSP already owns but refuses to activate. Well, Joel is always one for some interesting thought processes and his takes on stuff.
For sure.
So good guy to have around. All right. Hey, it's time to wrap up the show. We do want to thank our sponsors. Big thanks to our friends over at Hypebot and Bandsintown. We cannot thank them enough for all they do for us. By the way, if you'd like to advertise in the podcast and the newsletter, you can jump over to yourmorning.coffee for more information. Music is by our friends, the Licorice Quartet. And by the way, if you like this show, please just tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. So on behalf of my good friend, Jay Gilbert, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.